Time for you to understand and know everything there is to know about Underrot on our complete Mythic Plus guide. And here you will learn about routes, different tactics, what abilities to use, what to interrupt, basically things that you probably knew in the past but now are like up-to-date information 100%. You want that one-hander, right? You want that bile-infested prot thingy? You want that vile animated blood trinket? Well, look no further. As always, all of these Mythic Plus guides are made 100% through the support of our Patreons. It goes a very long way. So if you're interested, check the link in the description, patreon.com/Marcelian&Flame, and join the team that way. Not required, but man, does it make a big difference. Now let's go, baby. The route options here are also endless, and there is no direct linear path you can take, and you can pick and choose what feels best for you. If you don't want to think about it too much, we made two routes for you. One is bug-friendly, with no skips, and one which has an invis skip on the bridge before the first boss, which we recommend in pre-made groups where you know you're not going to wipe. Back in BFA, we had the Awaken affix and a permanent pillar skip, but now, if you skip it, you gotta make sure you know what you're doing. As you enter the dungeon, you are met with ticks on the left, ticks on the right, ticks everywhere. And you will want to avoid them, but someone will probably pull them anyway. So let's talk about what they do, shall we? First of all, they have a Bloodmaw, an attack dealing physical damage to your target for the next 4 seconds, and it stacks. They don't have too much health, so you will be tempted to nuke them down quickly, but wait! They explode when they die in a blood burst, dealing shadow damage to your entire party. Basically, stagger them a bit in high keys, especially in bursting weeks, or at least use defenses for crying out loud. Also, at the entrance here we have a chosen Blood Matron, who charges a random player, generally ranged, with Blood Harvest. This deals physical damage and is normally followed by Savage Cleave, savagely trying to cleave everyone in front of her and dropping a physical damage dot on everyone caught in it. So just sidestep her when this happens. We notice that if we stay closer in melee, she sometimes forgets to charge us, so your group should be stacked closer to her for this, but also pay attention to the cleave and the other trash frontals. She also casts Warcry, buffing herself and all nearby allies with an 100% haste buff and rage, which you should soothe if you have the tools for it, and nuke her down as she is the priority in most packs due to this cast. One of the allies she can empower is a fitted maggot, for example. These are gigantic, maggots who turn towards a player they like the looks of and cast Rotten Bile. Lovely. Basically throwing up green goo in a frontal cone trying to murder you, so dodge the frontal or outrange it, or better yet, CC it. The next pack could be skipped if you were clearing the ticks and did the weird jumps on the bridge, but no more! As soon as you get anywhere near the bridge, they will get pulled, so make sure to not accidentally pull this pack along with the Matron Patrol pack, cause it's a dangerous combo. The Fanatical Headhunters cast Hooked Snare, rooting one of your party members and dealing physical damage to them. You can use the classic escape tactics like Shapeshift, Freedom, Tiger's Lust, Disengage, and so on to free yourself or your friends from this, and possibly save a life if this would be combined with the Matron's Cleave. The Headhunters also cast Barbed Spear, shooting a spear at a target dealing physical damage. The Devout Blood Priests come with their own nasty abilities. They cast Blood Bolts, which deal shadow damage and can be interrupted. However, make sure to save at least 1 or 2 interrupts in your party. One for their Dark Reconstitution, which heals up one of their allies pretty much to full health, so make sure to stop it, especially when you pull them with higher priority mobs. The other important ability which you should interrupt is Gift of G'huun, blessing one of their allies with a purgeable buff, which will make them immortal for 20 seconds and slow them, so if you missed this interrupt, you still have a chance to purge it, but definitely don't let the heal go through. Now you can pick which bridge you'd like to take down on your way to the first boss. We wholeheartedly recommend going whichever side does not have 2 Matrons in the middle pack. These can be on the other side, so check where the double Matron pack is and go the other way. The main trash mob on these platforms are Befouled Spirits. You will want to spread out a bit for their attacks as they cast Dark Omen on a player, channeling dark magic into them, dealing shadow damage to the target and all other players in a 4-yard radius. Pop a defensive if needed and keep the priest interrupted while you focus down the spirit. Their other attack is Harrowing Despair, an interruptible AoE which deals shadow damage to all players in a 100-yard radius. This entire pack is also prone to stuns and other CCs, so don't shy away from using them. The only mobs that are immune to CCs so far are the Matrons. You can also choose to invis skip these packs, but the Matrons will see through your shenanigans, so be sure to not have any of them in your path. Also, only skip these if you are sure you won't ever wipe in this dungeon, as the res point is always at the start here. There is a shortcut after you kill the third boss, which we will show later, but you will still have to walk all the way past the first boss for it. The first boss is Elder Leaxa, and she points out all the baddies in your party. Every time you take damage from the boss mechanics, you will gain the Taint of Gahun stackable debuff, which will deal ticking shadow damage and place a healing absorb shield on you for all healing received. So stay out of the Creeping Rot, a frontal dealing nature damage to anyone in front of her and pretty easy to see and dodge, as she will turn towards a player before she starts casting. So being colorblind isn't an excuse, Chowie. But really, Blizz, red and green? Come on. Interrupt her blood bolts as often as you can, as they will also place a debuff on you. The debuff will be cleansed when the healing absorb is removed, so you can get rid of it. But if you continue being a baddie, your healer won't be able to keep up with the stacks, especially in tyrannical weeks. The last ability Leaxa has is teleporting to a random player and casting Sanguine Feast. This will inflict shadow damage to all nearby players, so move away from her at this point. Drawing power from the blood gods, she will split into blood effigies of herself, which will replicate her abilities, so yay, even more interrupts and dodging. Cleave the adds down quickly before you get overrun and have nowhere to move. On your way to the next boss, you will encounter more ticks and maggots, but you're already a professional in dealing with those. Other trash mobs we encounter here are the Diseased Lashers, the Living Rot, and the Feral Bloodswarmers. If you walk carefully through the middle and wait out the patrol, you can skip this tick pack on the left by just carefully walking through here. AoE silences and stuns are extremely powerful here on the Lasher packs as they cast Decaying Mind, stunning the target for what feels like forever, and placing a healing absorb shield on them too. Make sure to interrupt these cats or quickly heal up the victims to get rid of the stun early. Disease dispels are incredibly useful here, unless the dispeller was the one getting them stuns, which he often was. The flowers aren't dumb, man. Can fuck with nature. These are also very dangerous in combination with the other trash mobs that fixate or deal localized AoE damage or frontals, like the maggots, as your friends won't be able to dodge the mechanics while stunned. The Living Rot will cast Wave of Decay, blasting anyone around them with nature damage and dropping a pool of green poop under them. This is an interruptible cast, so if you can chain silences and stuns, you should be okay to pull these with a Lasher pack. Also, dodge the green swirlies on the floor before the green, foul sludge flying ball of goo hits them, as this also does a lot of damage. However, the Bloodswarmers are a different story. While they can be slowed, stunned, gripped, and so on, they are a pain to deal with. They cast a Sonic Screech, dealing physical damage within 45 yards and silencing casts for 2 seconds. Make sure to keep this interrupted. They will also cast Thirst for Blood, fixating a random player and hunting them down using melee attacks, so kite away or bop the fixated player if you have one available. This will completely reset their aggro and make the Bloodswarmers stop fixating. These mobs are also charging and are fast, so just make sure you have CC and don't pull too big here if your group cannot handle it. We try to not have 2 of them in the same pack generally. If you are an MDI player able to do those kind of pulls, you probably aren't watching this guide anyway. Oh, Cragmaw, our dearest stranger thing. This poor little guy is not feeling very well and we're trying to kill him for loots and a mount. Horrible monsters, these players. Anyway, back to Cragmaw. First off, he's probably the most difficult boss in here. Especially in tyrannical weeks, you want to make sure to have Bloodlust here. So if your Bloodlust is not ready after the first boss, you can continue clearing some trash further on and double back to him when your spell is available. His abilities are pretty straightforward, but not easy to deal with while keeping a good uptime on the boss, but we will discuss positioning a bit later after we go through the mechanics of the fight. The boss is in the middle of the room, munching down on a maggot, yum yum yum, which is probably what made him sick in the first place. As you pull him, his first ability will be either charge or indigestion. Regardless of where you tank him, always point him away from your party members, as indigestion is a frontal cone attack on your tank where the boss violently vomits a larvae, which needs to be quickly squashed before they grow into blood ticks through metamorphosis and become just like the ones we've had to deal with as trash packs. And if you remember, those explode when they die, dealing party-wide damage on top of the stacking dot they apply to their target. No need to add even more damage to this fight, thank you very much. So smush them, stomp them, stick them in a stew. If your tank is mobile enough or just pays attention to timers, he can even outrange the indigestion, making the healer a happy healer. When he does his charge, he will turn towards a party member and start casting. Move out of his way quickly and exaggerate the movement, as he will quickly charge in that direction and the hitbox is bigger than it seems. Everyone and anyone caught in his path will take ungodly amounts of physical damage or just die and get knocked back if they're not dead already. Don't be in his hitbox or you will be hit even from behind. The charge will also leave a trail of larvae, which again need to be quickly stepped on to not let them grow. The entire party needs to help with this. Upon reaching 100 energy, Cragmaw can't take it anymore and he will throw a tantrum for the next 6 seconds, running around aimlessly, spewing larvae all over the place and dealing buttloads of damage. This is the point where everyone needs to also run around like a headless chicken and stomp as many larvae as they can. Fast and mobile classes, roars, speed totems, leaps, etc. are super useful to have in this situation. Also, in high tyrannical keys, especially in a bug, your healer might be too busy trying to heal with the large amounts of damage the group is taking and might not have as much time to run too far, so the rest of the party members will need to deal with this. But healers, please try as well. It's a big room. This is also the moment when you want to use your defensives or healing potions on top of the healer cooldown. You might not be able to smush all of the larvae, so after his tantrum is done and the larvae turn into ticks, your tank will need to quickly get them off your party, generally the healer of course, so bring them close to him as well. You can also slow, vortex or stun them if you have more time. Kill them in a staggered fashion as previously mentioned. Now, depending on how capable your group is, you can choose where to tank him. If your party is not great at dodging the charges, tank him in the middle, giving you more room to wiggle with slow players. Or if you want to min-max the fight and have high DPS uptime for the melees, you can tank him near a wall, preferably here next to the bones. All of your DPS and your healer should be positioned around the blue marker between the boss and the bones to bait the charge, while your tank should be at the purple marker, baiting the indigestion away from the group. Clear the ticks and make sure to also go inside this blob here, as they sometimes spawn inside and you cannot see them. When he charges, clear out of his way towards the bones and move to the sides of him or behind him. He will faceplant into the bones, stopping his charge, and all of those larvae will also be neatly stacked, resulting in less running for your party to stomp them down. Onwards and forwards to the new mobs we encounter here. A pack of reanimated guardians and a fallen dead speaker. The reanimated guardians hit pretty hard with their melee attacks and cast Bone Shield, an instant cast magic shield absorbing damage taken which can be purged off of them. They don't use much else. The fallen dead speakers, however, will cast Raise Dead, trying to spawn more guardians. Keep this interrupted. They will also cast Wicked Frenzy on their allies and Enrage, which increases their haste and movement speed by 100%. You can CC or interrupt the Dead Speaker out of this cast, or if it goes through, you can soothe their target. Wicked Embrace is a magic debuff that inflicts shadow damage to an enemy for 12 seconds, so dispel it off your group members. Moving on, you may, and hopefully will, notice what appears to be a blood pool on the floor, and you might think nothing of it. Do not be fooled! As soon as you get close to it, a grotesque horror will spawn. These half-bodied snakies used to cast dead bolts, but with the recent changes, this ability has been reworked into Void Spit. These casts are interruptible, and they inflict shadow damage to an enemy within 100 yards. The horrors are no longer as bad as we remember them, as their cast no longer leaves a stackable dot, but they now have another cast they do, Dark Echoes, inflicting shadow damage to all players for the next 5 seconds, so make sure to keep this interrupted. You can choose the way towards the next boss, either go right and deal with another pack of guardians with a Dead Speaker, or go left and encounter your first Bloodsword Defiler. These are very dangerous mobs which need to have all of their casts interrupted. They channel Withering Curse, cursing all nearby players, increasing their damage taken and reducing their damage done by 10% per stack, and the longer the channel goes on, the more stacks you get, making it easier for you to die and harder to kill them. Make sure to keep them interrupted or silenced, and if the cast goes through, the curse can be dispelled by the classes capable of doing so, like Druids, Shamans, Mages, and Evokers. Don't forget to spec into it. The Defilers also cast Shadow Bolt Volley, a hard-hitting AoE spell which should also be interrupted, especially if you have stacks of the curse. Their last cast is Summon Spirit Drain Totem. If this cast isn't interrupted, it will spawn a totem which will cast Spirit Drain. Simply move away from the totem as its attack is melee range only, and when it goes off, it will deal large amounts of shadow damage to anyone nearby and stun them for 12 seconds. Near this patrol is another grotesque horror spawn point, so make sure to not pull it by accident and use these rocks on the left side to keep a very safe distance. If you want to also skip the double Defiler pack, you can jump back here and enter the third boss room. Before we talk about the third boss, however, I recommend killing the Defiler pack when dealing with bugs because, in most cases, they will pull it during the boss fight. The aggro range is big and you need to be careful with your distance. However, if you don't want to pull it, we will show you how to deal with the boss safely while it is still up. Sporecaller Zancha is a weird-looking dude who likes mushrooms. As you pull him, green, mushroom-looking spore pods start spawning around the room in a circular fashion through his Boundless Rot ability. When touched, these spores will erupt, inflicting plague damage and applying decaying spores to players near the eruption, a disease which will place a stackable dot on the players. While the spores are not too dangerous yet, your party needs to get rid of them before the boss reaches 100 energy by using the encounter mechanics. First off, position the boss so that he's facing a large clumps of spores so that he can destroy them with his Shockwave, a frontal cone attack targeted at your tank which will deal physical damage and clear all the spores in its cone. It's pretty much the same mechanic as the first boss in the Azure Vault dungeon. The boss will also cast Upheaval. This will place an arrow on 2 party members and a few seconds later, a swirly will spawn under them. The boss will send an underground shockwave towards these, as you can see through the clouds of smoke between the boss and the swirls, causing them to explode. The 2 marked players should position their swirlies on 2 different clumps of spore pods around the room and try to take out as many pods as possible. Please do not be lazy and position them away from the spore pods the tank is planning on clearing with shockwave. Like this pug right here we clearly don't know and have never met before. You can also have a very short window to move out of the swirly before it activates and knocks you. As for dealing with spore pods while the Defiler trash mobs are still alive, you can position your swirly on the inner circle of the room, close to the pods but not too close. So only do this if you are very confident in your abilities. The tank should also never come close to this point with the boss and let the upheaval players deal with this area. Once again, if you're touching the mushrooms, you've probably already pulled the trash. As the boss reaches 100 energy, he will cast Festering Harvest. You should have gotten rid of most, if not all, of the active spores by now, and if you haven't yet, we strongly recommend popping them before the cast is over. Some classes can deal with this better than others by using abilities like Anti-Magic Shell, Turtle, Cloak of Shadows, or Divine Shield. If you have none of these abilities, then just eat the spore and deal with the decaying spore disease. The tank is probably the best option for this, and hopefully someone in your party will be able to clear his disease stacks. If you don't clear them in time, they will place the disease on all of your party members, stacking up to the number of spores that explode. After every Festering Harvest, the boss will recast the Boundless Rot ability he used at the pool, spawning more spore pods for you to pop. The last ability in this fight is Volatile Pods. This will cause several mushroom-looking blobs to spawn around the room and burst into great orbs radiating outwards in all directions. Touching any of these orbs will deal damage and place decaying spores on you once more, so position yourself to a safe distance from the mushroom blobs and dodge, dodge, and dodge. Once Zancha is dead, a new way is open for those noobs who wipe in this dungeon, and, as promised, we will show it to you. So, releasing at the entrance, you have to go past the bridges, past the first boss, and make a left right here, and at the end of the tunnel, there will be no light, but a drop into the ruins where you defeated the third boss. Now in this area, again, you can choose several route options where you clear some packs or skip. Be very careful as the zone is full of the blood pools which spawn the horrors, so watch your step. What we generally do is go here to the right side as you come from the boss room. We deal with this horror plus the defiler, depending on the trash percentage we need. We either deal with this pack of bones here or we skip it by carefully walking on this edge to the left. We wait for the Faceless Corruptor patrol to pass and jump on the ruins here, avoiding the blood pools and ending up at the last trash mobs in the area, the double Corruptor pack. The Faceless Corruptors have two uninterruptible casts. Maddening Gaze is a long cast, heavy shadow damage frontal, which will also fear everyone who stands in it, causing you to run around like a madman, pulling all the horrors in your path. So get out of their face and sidestep this. Their second attack is Abyssal Reach, spawning void tentacles near players which will try to body slam you after a second. The safest way to deal with this is to move away from the tenties and you're golden. If you have a melee heavy comp, the tank may need to pull the Corruptors a bit forward to help out. From what we notice, however, the tentacles are a little bit, well, stupid. So sometimes changing your positions by a step or two will be enough, as they will slam the location their target was when they spawned, ignoring the new positioning. After killing these two Corruptors, Titan Keeper Hezrel will open up the way towards the last boss and join you there. If you happen to have casualties which need to be rezzed, your rezzer needs to quickly move away from the webbed area as they will be pulled in as soon as it's open. So move away, rez, move back in, and let's go to the last boss. Unbound Abomination is also a pretty straightforward one-phase encounter. The boss has the Blood Barrier passive ability, probably the most important thing about the fight, where he absorbs all damage taken and converts it into energy. When he reaches full energy, he will spawn 2 Blood Visage adds. During the encounter, you will need to make him spawn a total of 6 adds, each of them removing 18% of the Abomination's health when they die. We recommend that you continue attacking the boss for the first 2 sets of spawns, as you want him to gain energy as soon as possible and spawn the Visage adds fast. Once the third set of adds is available, you no longer need to attack the boss, so at that point swap to the last 2 adds, and GG easy, you killed it. The Titan Keeper, Hezrel, will be here as well to help you out with several encounter mechanics, one of them being that he helps you kill the Blood Visage adds by casting Holy Bolt or Purge Corruption on them, killing them off in a few seconds. So for the first 2 sets of adds, let Hezrel deal with them by himself. For the third set, check which ad he is not attacking yet and have your party swap to that one. Now let's talk about the rest of the mechanics. As you pull the boss, we recommend your entire party stays stacked on the tank or at least in melee. Position the boss sideways or towards the outer edges of the room to more easily deal with his vile expulsion. This will be cast at a random player and it will deal shadow damage in a frontal cone, so it's better to be baited outwards, thus helping you maximize the space you have to work with. You can also sidestep out of his frontal to dodge the initial damage. From the frontal, patches of corruption will spawn on the floor, dealing tick and shadow damage to anyone who stands in them. Reposition the boss when you no longer have a good baiting spot, and don't forget to yell at the pug that baited the frontal to the middle of the room. You got them, idiot! Putrid Blood is his other ability, which places a stackable magic dot on all party members, which stacks pretty fast if not dealt with. You can dispel it, but it will stack up faster than you can clear it. This is when our buddy Hezbrel helps out once again. He will occasionally cast Cleansing Light on a player, a 10-yard AoE light which will cleanse everything in the area. So when you get this, everyone needs to stack on the tank and cleanse their Putrid Blood debuffs. This will also clear out any patches of corruption under it. Unless, of course, it happens to be cast on that pug you always have in your group who gets confused and runs away because an ability is on him.
Panic! Must panic!
The corruption on the floor will also spawn rotting spores, slow orbs of corruption which move slowly towards a random player. If you run in contact with these spores, they will explode and deal damage and spawn even more patches of corruptions on the floor. The best way we found to deal with them was to CC them when they got too close. Slows, traps, biting shots, vortexes, AoE fears, typhoons, and so on. Lingering abilities like Death and Decay and Tar Trap are the best to place between the ads and your group, keeping several waves of them slowed as they no longer get one-shot by abilities and have quite a lot of health now. Just keep slowing and trapping them while kiting the boss away and dealing with the rest of the mechanics. Congratulations! Now you are a master of Underrot and there's nothing there to surprise you anymore. Hopefully this will help you with your dungeon runs and your farm runs to get your bile-infested weapons and your vial of animated bloods or whatever. And once again, if you enjoyed this type of video, let us know in the comments. Any feedback is greatly appreciated. Thank you Patrons for making these guides possible. Patreon.com/Marcelian&Online is the place you want to check out. See if there's anything there good for you. We have wallpapers for you. We have podcasts, Patreon exclusive podcasts. We have bloopers. Plus the fact that you're supporting this content. Thank you for watching. Have a great day ahead. Bye.
I've been loving it then, I still love it now. Still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. Getting better every day, let me show you how. Cause still, I play WoW. Still, I play WoW. It's getting harder to stay, but at the end of the day, it's a guilty pleasure, so just log in and play. Whether it's classic or retail, I'ma do a /bow. Still, I play WoW.